Hello and welcome to the Subscriber Show. Thanks for joining us on the other side. It's going to be about music, this, as the title suggests, in the main. We are going to do some mental health stuff as well. Joined again by Mo Stewart, who was on the free show. If you didn't see that, go and watch it. Before we start, though, I've only just found out that the fella with the baked beans balaclava who stood in Jacob Rees-Mogg's constituency was wearing a baked bean balaclava because apparently Rees-Mogg said something derogatory about baked beans once. So not only was it just brilliant in general, seeing him lose his seat and be stood next to someone in a baked bean balaclava, there's actually meaning to it. Oh yeah,
it went deep. I love the commitments of the bit, although I'm slightly now disappointed that there's now apparently two things in which I agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg about, because I also hate baked beans.
Oh, lad.
And apparently he's obviously allegedly got kids who support Liverpool, so... Look, right, we're not going to start off on a
No, we're not going to start on about... I mean, I'm a big advocate of the beans, and I'm really glad that there are some in my cupboard, because there haven't been for a while, and I got some in at the weekend, so come on the beans. But no, we're going to talk about music. Mo, in his other life as a DJ, was at Glastonbury, DJing at Glastonbury, which is pretty fucking cool, isn't it? So I'm going to ask you about Glastonbury first of all. Highlights, lowlights, all that kind of stuff.
I mean, well, obviously that was the highlight. Yeah. There's no getting around it. So I have done it a few times before. So this was technically the fourth time I've DJed at Glastonbury, and they've all been a bit different. So the very first time was in a nudist colony.
Ever?
There's a nudist colony at Glastonbury.
Wow.
Up by the TP field.
Here we go.
Yeah. I must also point out I wasn't nude, like, because that's literally the first thing everyone asked me when I was saying. It's like, were you nude as well? No, I wasn't, although it's bloody hot, so I was kind of topless. But anyway, that was mad. It was like they were their own community within Glastonbury, and it was all a bit like, we're not letting outsiders in because we think that they're going to take the piss out of us. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah. Although, like, I'm just going to leave you with this mental image. They had a sand pit.
Wow.
Yeah. The second time I DJed at Glastonbury was in one of the crew bars, which was loads of fun because the crew, the people who've been there, they've been on site for like months and months and months, setting everything up, and they're all a hardy bunch. And it was on a Sunday night, so it was like last knockings. Everyone else was just bringing the last bit of energy that they had left out of them, and that was lots of fun. But again, it wasn't the kind of thing you could invite your friends to.
Yeah.
Then last year, I played for the first time at this place I was at this year, the Village Inn. And it was great because not only was I able to say to people, come down here, but like when you had the app, the lineup app, I was on there. I was just like, I spent about a good 5 minutes just looking at my phone, just looking at my name on my phone, just thinking, this is mad. This is me at Glastonbury. Yeah. But the gig itself was I was a bit like, you know what? I'm not going to plan it too much. I'm just going to freestyle it because, you know, I've been DJing for 20 years now. I know my shit. I can just go in there and do that. And I did. But this year I was like, well, obviously I need to make it better. So this year I did it. I planned it. I constructed a set like an actual proper professional DJ, like 90 minutes, start to finish. It was like 33 different songs in 90 minutes. So there's lots of mixing, lots of kind of like fancy bits, lots of fancy tricks. And I normally try to shy away from all that stuff. Normally I'm just about, people come to see me because I play good tunes. They don't necessarily need to be all fancy bells and whistles. It's just the tunes. This time was different. And you know what? It paid off. Like, don't let anyone tell you practice doesn't pay off, because it does. And it was just one of those things where every little thing went right. And I just spent the 2 hours afterwards just like grinning like an idiot. Like, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was just like, I just played the gas rate. Brilliant.
Did I read right from someone that tweeted you that you worked in
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So there's a remix of the Star Wars Cantina Band song that I've been playing every now and then for a while. So my plan for this was to try it as much as possible to represent all of the mad shit that I play. Because, I mean, I normally play for like 5-6 hours at a time. So it's not like you can say, oh, I just play this one genre. I go all over the place.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. And there are certain songs that people know me for, and that's one of them. So I was like, I've got to throw that in there. And yeah, it went off.
Is right. I mean, I did like. I didn't see it at Glastonbury because I wasn't at Glastonbury, but I did like it when I seen you at the Smithdown Festival.
Yeah,
and you knew you worked in the stairs into your set early doors, and I was like, it's right, bro.
Well, that's one of my favorite things. One of my favorite things to do. I call it a hello. So if there are friends of mine who I know are coming, and so there's certain songs that I know that they like, even if they don't come over and say hello, I'll play the song, and then they'll be like, "You play that for me?" Yeah. And they'll be my way say,
right.
"Hello."
Yeah.
So.
I love all that. I mean, you said it wasn't the first time. You said you'd been there before, but as things to do as a DJ, doing it at Glastonbury's got to be right up there, hasn't it?
It is. It's when I first started going, or even when I first started watching it on telly, I couldn't conceive of the idea of me as a performer at Glastonbury. Like I say, me being in the line, like my face being on the app, being in the lineup, being my name in there. It's mind blowing to think about, because I never really got to a stage where I was a famous DJ outside of people know me from playing around town. So like in terms of Liverpool City Centre, I feel like I've got it locked down. I've pretty much played everywhere there over like 15 years. So I've built up a strong reputation, but I wouldn't thought that I'd be the kind of person who, you're going to book me to go and play in Ibiza or New York or whatever. But Glastonbury's my yard. Like I've been going there as a punter every year since like 2002. So that was always in the back of my mind. I was just like, one day, I'm going to try. I'll get there. And it literally nearly took me 20 years, but I got there.
So any you'd end up like having a piss next to someone, or you're having a pint with someone, or you're just rubbing shoulders with someone, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. So, I mean, without wanting to sound like a bellend, but I'm going to do it anyway.
Do it anyway.
Yeah. So I've had a job there at Glastonbury for the last 11 years. And part of that job is working in accreditation. So I give the wristbands to artists who work in a certain area. So you see quite a few people come through. So like Bez now basically runs an area in our section, so I see him every year. Craig Charles plays every year, so I see him every year. There's quite a few of them who are like part of the Glasto furniture, and like you know them over time. You see him, like Goldie's another one, and it's like you just see him, and you just let on to him, just like, all right. And you don't make a big deal of it, but at the same time, you're already like, fucking hell, was a Goldie over there. Yeah. But this year, there was quite a few. So there's a certain parts of Glastonbury that aren't open to everybody. And they have a no cameras policy, because it's just like anybody can be in there and they just want to be able to relax and just enjoy themselves. And I was in one of those places, and I literally bumped, and when I say I literally bumped into him, like he spilled my drink over me. Noel Gallagher.
No.
Yes, the aforementioned Noel Gallagher, who, he was
been slagging the Glastonbury off.
Yeah. He certainly seemed like he was enjoying himself when I saw him, put it that way. He certainly felt like he wasn't over Glastonbury. He certainly wasn't complaining about anything when I saw him. He was certainly enjoying himself.
Well, his grinchy comments, because he is a bit of a grinch and always has been. And also, I always think with everything with him, you've got to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt, in that he knows what gets headlines. He knows what creates a story. And so he purposely says things, I think, to create stories on the regular throughout his career. He's always done this, and it's a little bit pinch of salt and a little bit fucking cheeky smile type job. They've done it. I thought they'd pick up on that bit. Like when he said, what was it? In Britain, for a lot of people, taking drugs is like having a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, that's obviously going to become a massive headline, and it did, and it keeps his name out there, doesn't it? And so he's moaned about it being, and it's very much like, who does Noel Gallagher, when he releases a record now, appeal to? Probably fellas like me, my age, etc. Is there a subset of fellas my age, etc., who are going to be into the use of the word woke
as a bad thing?
Probably. And so he's thrown woke in there. He said it's getting a bit woke. It's kind of preachy. It's virtue signaling. And I don't like it in music. Little fucking idiots waving flags around and making political statements. Bands taking the stage and saying, hey guys, isn't war terrible? Let's boo war. Fuck the Tories and all that. It's like, just play your fucking tunes and get off. Now, Glastonbury's obviously been associated with like freedom of speech and protest forever.
Ever.
So there's that. And then, and even in the same thing, he's banged on, and he's going on about virtue signaling and wokeness and all the rest of it. And then he says it's probably the best fucking thing about Britain apart from the Premier League.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's almost like he's aware, like you say, he's absolutely aware of what he's doing. And I'm never going to get too wound up about anything he says because of that. It's almost like he knows every now and then, he knows exactly how to stir the pot precisely. And it's funny because, like I say, when I saw him, he certainly didn't sound like he was saying any of that. Because if he'd have said any of that to the company he was with when we said it, he'd have been out on his ass, basically. And he knows that. So it will be interesting to see if any of them pull him up on it next year when he inevitably comes back. But there's a part of me that did feel a little bit like I felt like I needed to defend the protesters because, I mean, obviously one of the fellas who was there was Jamie Webster, and I went to see him on Saturday, and it was one of my favourite moments of the whole weekend because not only is it's amazing when someone who you know, who again kind of like me, who's like been coming for ages and just been like, I wonder what it would be like to be out there. He did it. He absolutely did it, and he had a massive crowd, and obviously he was very vocal about his political stance, and so it was almost like you could imagine it was Jamie in mind when he was saying it, even if he didn't mention it. So I'm a bit like, well, no, actually, we kind of need people.
Well, there was loads of stuff, wasn't there? There was, there was the Banksy thing.
Yeah.
There was Damon Albarn said something, didn't he? And that's always been Gravy Oasis and all that kind of thing. It's all,
never gonna let that lie.
It's all that kind of stuff as well. I mean, there was lots of. I feel like this happens every year, and you as someone who's a big fan of Glastonbury, I am as well. I've been twice. It's a long time since I've been. Not sure if I'll go again. Not sure the life will allow it. We'll see. But it feels to me like it's always getting slagged off in some way, whether it's like the people who are playing, the people who aren't playing, something about it. And there was loads of that this time, but I don't know whether it was like recency bias. It felt like there was more this year. There was loads of it this year. So you had lots of stuff about no one was really asked about Scissor. Shania Twain's Sam was apparently shite. There was lots of allegations of miming and lip syncing and all this kind of stuff going on. The prices were getting a slagging, so it was $360 now, $360 that is for a ticket. It was £6.75 for a pint. It was £12 for vodka and Red Bull. It was £30 for a bottle of wine. All of these kind of things.
So first of all, about the prices. Second of all, you have to remember it's in the south of England, so £6 for a pint is just standard. Second of all, if you're buying a bottle of wine at Glastonbury, then you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, take it with your life.
Yeah, exactly. So one of my Sunday traditions is I'll buy a box wine, a box of like a 3 litre box of wine, normally from Home Bargains, and that will be my Sunday. And from whenever I start drinking, normally around about 11 o'clock, to whenever it takes me to finish it, normally around 5 o'clock, that'll do me. And it's like, it's almost like carrying it like a baby, just like...
Yeah.
But there are ways, you don't have to spend, like, there are ways to do it without allowing yourself to fall into that trap. And to be fair to Glastonbury, when it comes to food, I think it's about 70% of the food stalls have a cheap meal. So they had like a sticker saying like a Glastonbury cheap meal, and for like £6 you could get a meal. And like, so most food there was like between 10 and 15 quid for a burger or fish and chips or whatever food it was. But then most of them would have somewhere where you could get a meal for £6. So if you were absolutely brassic and you were desperate, there was something for you. So there's more provisions for people who haven't got a lot of money than a lot of other places. The price of the festival itself, it's hard to justify. It's hard to kind of live with it because, like, even if you talk about the idea of inflation, even if you talk about the idea of supply and demand, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And some people think of it as, well, it's like a summer holiday for me. It's not like going to a music event. It's not like you're going to a gig for one day. It's like a whole thing. And when you think about it in that point of view, if you're going Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, So then that's what, 5 days. If 360, and then you say maybe spend maybe 150 pounds on food and drinks, so it's like 500. So then it becomes like £100 a day. If you're going on holiday for 5 days, you'd expect to pay £100 a day.
I mean, and look, obviously inflation is a thing and has happened, but equally, like, I think the first time I went, I definitely paid 100 and something.
Yeah.
Not 300 and something. But like I say,
I said I was going to stop going when it got to 200. I'm full of shit.
and you're still there. But look, so we've said no, Gallagher's talking shite, the media is talking shite, but on the actual lineup though, I think everyone has different opinions every year, but did you think it was a bit shit this year?
It wasn't the strongest in terms of the top end. So Dua Lipa, obviously, it's hard to say that she wasn't in the bracket of people who could step up to be a headliner. I had no problem with that. SZA was a bit more of a swinger. And the thing is having the two of them together. So you have someone who's stepping up to that level. If you're going to have one of those, then you normally have two bankers. And yeah, you can say Coldplay are a banker, but they're almost too far in the other direction. Well, I say almost, they are too far in the other direction. It's like, nobody needs to see a Coldplay show anymore. Like, you know what you're going to get. And there are people who are like, oh, but it's great. It's like, there's the equivalent of like a pepperoni pizza. It's just like, if you can't think of anything else to have, then have a pepperoni pizza. It's like, you'll enjoy it, but you'll never think, you know what, I'm really, really glad I had that pepperoni pizza.
Yeah, I'm not having them. I wouldn't pay money to go and see them. Wider music, wanted to not just talk about Glastonbury, but, wider music, this chat, I guess, could go anywhere. But the idea is we both like our music.
Yeah.
And the whole shebang basically has changed in our lifetime. So, I can remember buying, records when I was still in school from Pro Records. I can remember going to my first gig, which was Ride, supported by Verve.
Honestly, if you'd have asked me to guess who it would have been, I would have said those two, or maybe the last.
At the Royal Court. The Verve, they went the Verve, they were just Verve then, and then they had to add the later on. I remember Richard Ashcroft bouncing around the stage at the Royal Court in bare feet. And straight away I was like, what a guy.
Yeah.
And I went and bought their EP, All in the Mind, a few days later. Now it's all, it's digital, it's Spotify, it's YouTube, it's 1,000,001 different ways of getting your music. Obviously, vinyl's made a bit of a comeback. What I have found good doing a bit of research with this is not only is it making a comeback and it keeps on rising, but actually young people are buying it. And I was like, oh, get in. Here we go. Here's the revolution. But, digital, I guess, is a big thing for anyone in the music industry, whether you're a fan or whether you're a musician or whatever. And I've put it on the agenda as digital killed the radio star. It seems fundamentally wrong to me that a platform is making loads of money and the people who make the music aren't.
Yes, it is wrong. And it's almost like an ideological shift, because the way that we consume everything now is changing. If you think about TV, think about all kinds of culture and entertainment, it's all changing. And whereas you mentioned vinyl, but I'm a CD kid. Like when I first started collecting music, getting into music, or buying CDs, like I've still got a room in my house that's just literally wall to wall CDs.
I had tapes, lad. It took me a long time to get to depart from. Like I still had them for years. I found it really hard to throw them. In the end, I kept all the inlay cards.
So I've got there's a box. And I say that there's a box. I'm hoping there's still a box at my dad's house of all of the tapes that I recorded off the radio. And one day I'd love to go back and listen to those, because there's probably some mad shit on there. But it was about the idea of physically owning stuff, because obviously you could hear music on the radio, you could hear music on TV shows, but if you wanted to listen to the song when you wanted to listen to it, you had to physically buy the record or the CD and then play it yourself. Now you can rent it from a streaming platform and do that whenever you want. But it doesn't, that money, like you say, the money doesn't go to the people, or enough of it doesn't go to the people who are making it. And if you was to explain the whole concept of Spotify to someone without talking about music. So he's saying, okay, well, there's this company that kind of rents all of this content, and the people who make the content get a tiny amount of it, and the people who license the content get loads of it. You think, well, that's not right.
No,
How does that work? But I'll tell you how it works, because the streaming companies, rather than paying the artists, they're paying the record labels.
I know.
And that's the thing. So suddenly...
But they're not paying for all the costs that they used to have to justify that.
Yeah.
So they're not churning out millions of CDs or millions of records or paying for the distribution of those or whatever. You know, yes, limited, you know, a limited run of all of those things, but nowhere near the same, you know, production costs, basically.
No.
So how come they're dishing out the same deals and they're boxing themselves off from a platform? And meanwhile, you know, the artist is getting an estimated 0.0031 per stream. I remember Timo from the T Street Band ages ago when, you know, he used to do bits and bobs with them on the regular basis, and they came with his Amphi rap and things like that. And he said, like, every now and again, just get like some random check for like a really small amount, and it'd be like, oh yeah, cheers, lads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I remember a friend of mine, she was just starting out and she'd just been signed to a publishing deal to a record label. And she was like, I've been told that if I get X amount of streams, then they'll put me on a better deal because they'll mean there'll be more exposure. So she was like basically sending out a group text to all of her mates. It's like, can all of you please just stream this through night? And I did it. Like, I set it up so I had my computer on, and I was just basically had the song on repeat for 24 hours. Just had the song on repeat for 24 hours. And she messaged me afterwards and said, like, your individual 1 day's worth of streams was less than 5p. And it's like, that shouldn't be right. Like, if I'm playing your record that many times, like, even if I've paid £4 for a CD single, then you play it as many times as you want. How many times have you got to play it for it to be £5 or 5p a play? Like hundreds.
It's mad, isn't it? I mean, you know, me and my mates, you mentioned that, you know, and I think I probably mentioned them enough on here for people to know it as well. Yes, I do like the Lars. And one of our, like, sort of perennial conversations amongst me and my heightened peers, if you like, is, do you reckon Lee Mathers is all right? Like, do you reckon, you know, he's got enough money to, like, get by and all that, like? And the consensus is
yes.
It seems to vary, but, like, you know, most people from, like, some people who might know him or do know him or whatever, conservative estimates here, more wild ones over there, most people seem to be like, he's getting about 40 to 50 grand a year off just royalties from, like, mainly There She Goes, you would get. So, as an example of what we're talking about here, on Spotify right now, if you go to the Lars page, it says that There She Goes has been streamed 321 million times. What? The fella should be driving around in a fucking Rolls Royce and living in a mansion, not living on fucking Swig Lane in Iton. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's like that to me is just wild. Like it's like, you know, those people who write the songs and perform the songs, they're the people who should be getting absolutely boxed off.
And they're the people that we can't afford to lose out of this industry. Yeah. Like, so again, talking back to record labels, like there was an article on The Guardian a few months ago that talking about all of this and about the costs of music and how it's not really a viable life choice for musicians to call it a career anymore. And one of the people interviewed was singer Lily Fontaine from a band called English Teacher, who incidentally were one of my highlights at Glastonbury. They were fantastic. And she talks about the fact that, like, artists are the biggest employers now in the industry. So you think about a record label, the people in traditional mind, you think people need a record label because they're the ones who pay for all the stuff. But essentially a record label will give a band an advance, and out of that advance comes everything. So the tour manager, session musicians, agent, manager, crew, insurance, travel, accommodation, equipment, rehearsal space, production, all of that comes out of the money that the record label is giving them. The record label aren't paying for that themselves. So they're on, I think, a 16-date UK tour recently, English Teacher, playing some venues are like £800, 800 capacity shows, big venues. They have yet to make a profit out of any live show. Now, when you think about as a musician, if you think about all of what we've just been saying about the streaming and about how they're not making money from selling records anymore, the people who, the streaming companies, the record companies saying, oh, well, you make all your money from touring now. It's like, well, no, they don't. Because all of the money that they're making from, all of the money that they're generating from touring is having to go out on all of these expenses that most people assume that a record company themselves are paying for, but they're not.
And, you know, I've got that on the agenda, that the tickets themselves, the prices to go to a gig just going up and up and up and up. And, you know, you can see it yourself if you're into music and you go regularly. And again, you know, I'm doing the Al fella thing, but I'm an Al fella. So when I was at uni, I saw Oasis, Weller, The Prodigy, all, you know, loads and loads of top acts that I could afford as a student. Some of those played my uni and in Sheffield, and it was affordable for me to go. Now, can you really say the same thing now about some of the top? No. Like the money's mad for some of them, and it's like even quite like sort of intimate ones, like sort of more like mid-level artists that they're charging like 40 and 50 quid for like fairly small venues, and like part of me is like, well, if you're getting the arse ripped out of you from, you know, Spotify, etc., and you can't make the money on your record, this must be why. But, you know, what you're saying as well is there's a deeper reason as well. And like, you know, I looked into this myself, and things like COVID, apparently, a lot of people left the industry and then didn't return. So the people that remain can now charge more because there's not as many of them. There's that's a part of it. I'm sure what I've just said is a part of it in that they do not make what they once did off records, etc.
No.
And also, you know, when you do a gig, you've got merch and you've got everything else, and you'll make a bit off that. Like, I think, was it John Power? I remember it could have been John Power I spoke to once, and I said, so I think I had a bit of a joke with him where I said like about, you know, you always play, Cast always do a Christmas gig in Liverpool, and he's like, yeah, got to pay for Christmas, haven't I? And you're like, yeah. Do you know what I mean? And why not? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly, and it's almost like you forget about that, the kind of almost the simplicity of that, and it's like you need to keep things going. And if you've got a regular gig there that you know that you can have every year, then you want to keep it going. Yeah. But in talking about like the cost of everything going up and the price of people in the industry. So one of my good friends, John, he's a lighting technician. He's been a lighting technician for like a lot of really high-ranking artists and stuff. Like he's been touring with bands for years and years. Done like Madison Square Garden, like all the big hitters across the world. And so I spoke to him because I knew we were going to be talking about this, and he's very much like, the point isn't so much that people can charge more. It's the point that the people who own music, and when I say own music, I mean the people who own the venues, the people who are doing the promotion for all of the shows, the people who own the record labels. So Live Nation, for example, as a company, they own a lot of that. So they also own Ticketmaster. So I'll tell you, he sent me their profits across the last few years. So these are in millions of dollars. So 2018, $2,820 million. 2019, $3,081 million. COVID hit them in 2020, went down to $459 million. So there's the reason the people who are owning all of this are simply refusing to give up any of their profits, and they're certainly not letting any of their profits trickle down to the customer. So that is what's happening. You've got these people who have basically got a monopoly on large swathes of the industry. Yeah. And so then you'll have occasional artists, so like a Taylor Swift, for example, someone who is undoubtedly one of the world's biggest artists who hasn't toured in about 4 or 5 years. She was charging big numbers for her tour, and people paid it, and she made generated $2 billion from her tour, because obviously she's not getting all $2 billion, so she's still got costs herself. But then that means that people want to be on that level. So people believe, well, okay, well, I should be, if Taylor Swift is charging 250 quid for a ticket, I should be able to charge 160 quid for a ticket because I'm that much lower on the rank. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that way. So Black Keys, who are a band who I really liked, and
Yeah, me too.
for a while they were really they were at the top echelon in terms of touring bands. They basically had to cancel an entire tour because they couldn't sell the tickets. So they were placing themselves in like 50, 60,000 capacity arenas, selling tickets for like $80, and no one was buying them. But if they'd have stripped it back and said, okay, we're going to do 1,500 to 3,000 capacity venues, $20 a pop, they'd have sold out.
Yeah.
But it's like you've got to realign.
Well, did you see the price of the tickets for Pearl Jam? So I was into Pearl Jam, big into them. Me and my mate loved them. Bought a lot of the records, all of that, and I've ticked a lot of the boxes bucket list wise of artists I want to see, and I'd never seen them. And then I seen a thing saying they were touring, seen a thing saying they were coming to Manchester. And then you had to do it. They released this big thing about how they hated touts and all that, blah, 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 blah. And then you had to sort of do this big pre-register malarkey to even have a chance of then buying a ticket. And so I did it all because I thought, well, man, going to that, I'd be boss that. Got a thing saying I was eligible to buy one. Click through, £160. I was like, get fucked.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to see you, but £160 is taking the fucking piss.
And
I'm not going.
What makes it worse is that, like you say, when they make such a stand about being anti-touts and trying to understand it from the point of view of the fans, it's like you clearly don't understand it from the point of view of your fans, because we were there talking about how Glastonbury is a lot for 360 quid.
Yeah.
You can see 100 acts for 360 quid, not one for 160 quid. So Childish Gambino is another one, like someone who I really would love to go and see. And I was really excited when I found out he was touring the UK until I saw the price of tickets. I was just like, no, can't be doing that. And again, this is part of the reason why I want to make sure I'm at Glastonbury every year, because it's like a lot of these touring bands will still come there. So that's my way of
getting to tick them off,
getting them all in one go.
A study from French consultant firm PM Strategy found prices of concerts rising at almost twice the rate of inflation since 2019. Some musicians have also been blaming Brexit for causing ticket costs to soar. A survey by industry body UK Music found 82% of British performers have lost income since the UK left the European Union. Costly paperwork and new regulations means tour in Europe is too expensive for smaller artists, so they may look to recoup lost earnings by charging more for gigs at home.
Yeah.
Cheers for that.
There's a thing called a carnet, which I didn't know much about, but essentially it's a passport for goods. So Formula One teams use it when they kind of transporting all their gear from country to country. So you pay a certain amount a year, and that kind of allows you to take all of your equipment from country to country duty free, tax free for 1 year. But it's even for a smaller artist, it's like 500 quid for a year, and then it's completely exhaustive. So you have to have absolutely everything on it. So say, for example, you've been touring for 3 months and then suddenly you get a new member and they've got a new guitar, or one of your members has got sick, so you have to get someone in to replace it, and they want to bring their own guitar, their own amp. You've either got to add that, or you've got to get a whole new carnet, or you end up paying fines and fees at every single stop along the way. And it's just like, there are so many kind of red tape hurdles and obstacles put in the way of these people. Like the idea of back in the day where you used to think you just sing a guitar over your shoulder and just go off and just go and play as many gigs as you want. It's like, that doesn't exist anymore.
Why is everyone making it fucking hard to have fun? I don't know. Just fuck off. Someone's asked in the comments whether I like the pale fountains. I've got Pacific Street. I like, something on my mind, Gene's not happening, that kind of thing. But I'm more of a Shaq, Mick Head type of man. I mean, they're a bit 80s for me, pale fountains. I was a bit young to be into them, if you like, but I've gone back and listened, but I prefer the later stuff, I think it's fair to say. I think Mick's new album is really good, and I've been getting into that big time lately. I feel like it's a very good, and I don't think this is insulting in any way, it's a very good Sunday album. I've got it on vinyl, and I've said about on here before, I don't get to do it every week, but I try and do it, and I think it's a nice thing to do. Someone somewhere said once, and it lodged in my mind, that they every Sunday sit down and listen to an album in its entirety and don't do anything else. And I always think, that's boss, that.
My dad used to do that.
And I try and do it, but inevitably it's more like I put it on, listen to it in its entirety, but I'm washing the dishes, washing my clothes, whatever. I'm doing shit round the gaff, which is closer to what you should be doing when you listen to an album. But yeah, I've been listening to that new Mick album a lot on a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's very good.
No, that's like one of my early memories of my dad. So he worked 2 jobs. So he had his 9 to 5 job, but then he had a job that he did on Tuesday nights and Saturdays, daytime. So Sunday was literally the only day where he wasn't working. And it would normally be after dinner. So we'd have dinner around about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then from about 6 until 9 o'clock, he'd be in his, like, we have 2 living rooms, one with a TV in and one with all of his music set up in it. And he'd be in that room, sitting down, and there's like just records, just like the same way I've got a room that's just pure CDs. He had one with pure vinyl, and he'd just be in there and he'd just be listening to music. And it's like, you could go in there and you could ask him a question, but he's not leaving that room. So whatever the answer to that question is, he needs to be able to answer it there. If it's like, can you go, and the answer is no. And like,
it's my music time.
Yeah, he didn't ask for a lot, my dad. He just wanted 3 hours a week where he could just go out and sit and chill and listen to music. And yeah, even though we were kids who were, you know what kids are like, you always just want something. I've kind of always remembered that, and I'm always just like, you know what? I respect him for that. He needed this time.
Absolutely. I was going to mention, I'm starting to self-edit, thinking about stuff we're planning on getting through and the time. So, in summary, the Spotify CEO is a wanker.
Yes.
Next, I do want to mention Tom Gray, who is a member of Gomez, who I think are a fantastic band. Really, really good live. If you ever get the opportunity to watch all of them, or even some of them, they're all very good and they're all excellent live, and good band to just go back and listen to. Never had a go with them, but Tom has sort of gone off to the left a little bit and sort of raged against the machine big time about sort of that it's wrong that artists aren't getting the money they should do, that labels and streaming outlets etc. are getting too much. And I found some quotes from him more recently where he said that there is a cultural delusion around the glamour of music, which is for the most part portrayed and pushed by musicians themselves in order to maintain the appearance of success. But even very successful, he's done it like that, musicians and artists that you've heard of do not make enough money from recorded music to pay their rent. I mean, I knew of this myself. Like, there's a lad who I used to sit next to in business studies when I was doing my A-levels, Paul Fleming, who ended up being the keyboard player in Echo and the Bunnymen, and then ended up going on his own and doing some solo stuff under the name Baltic Fleet.
Yeah. I didn't know you know him.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Yeah. So when I was doing stuff with Beat Elite, I did an interview with him a couple of times. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he's a lovely bloke. But he's basically doing like a normal job.
Yeah.
And doing it very well, by the way, and he's been very successful both in music and his job. But when I spoke to him about it, I had a pint with him a few years back. He actually sort of, I doubt he's listening to this, but to prove his soundness, I was at a very low point at the time we last went for a pint. And I think what he did was join the dots, what he saw on social media, and thought, Gareth might want to go for a pint there. And I did. So thank you, Paul, for doing that in the small chance that you might be listening. But anyway, when we spoke, he was saying, he's obviously very good.
Yeah.
And yet he couldn't make a living out of it. And I was sort of like I just did a bit like Tom said there. I had no idea as a man who, loves music, buys music, used to buy the Enemy, Melody Maker Select, all of those things religiously. I just had no idea. I just assumed if you're the keyboard player in Echo and the Bunnyman,
You meant it.
and then you go, yeah, you're doing well, you're flying, you're a proper musician, you're doing what you do. And he's like, nah, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm working this. And you're like,
And
mad.
Tom's right to say that a lot of the time the musicians try to avoid that because in their mind, the perception of the rock star, they need to be able to project success. Otherwise, people won't want to be involved with them. But I think we're at a different point in life now where you can be more honest about things, and transparency, I think, is really important. So again, my mate John, I was speaking to him about similar things. He said he knows people signed indie bands, regularly played on Six Music. They've all got second jobs. Like I was saying before, they all lose money on playing gigs. Merch is the key. So if you are wanting to support a band, even more important than going to the gig is buying the merch. That's where they make their money. That's where they're basically using that money to work out how much money they can get for their food for the next month or whatever. That's really where it is. And it's depressing to think that they have to be at such a level. They have to be thinking about it so low. But I also think it's one of those things where for a lot of time, we as consumers are feeling the pinch ourselves. So it's like, well, we don't have to go the extra mile for them. They're rich, they're rock stars. But it's like, if we actually know, they're not rich. Actually, no, they need our help to continue to make this art. I think that we're going to be more inclined to be like, okay, well, if I can help you out, I will.
Yeah, I mean, there's some bands that I absolutely love as well. And like, you know, I'll always go to them, their gigs when they play. And, you know, they won't mind me saying they're a bit older now. The real people are a bit older than they once were. The Stairs are a bit older than they once were. But, you know, I've been fortunate enough to, like, you know, see them both recently. And I remember speaking to Edgar out of the Stairs some time back. It was when they first reformed again. I was made up that they did and went out to Manchester and saw them there. And I said to him, like, in the bar, like, I was like, yeah, I said, do you know how much like your album is going for online on vinyl? And he didn't really know. And I said, it's proper rare. And I said, the likes of me would pay a fair whack for that.
Yes.
And I've been looking for it for a long time. And if anyone's got a copy, you want to sell me.
I knew we were coming there.
And I said, you know, couldn't you put that back out yourself? And he was like, well, just go discs, own it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this just seems mad. Like, you know, what are they doing with it? Like, they're just sitting on it. Like, you know, why can't they give it back after a certain amount of time? And you can do what you want with it. And you can maybe make some money off it now. Like, it just doesn't seem ethical or right. Or
no, it doesn't. And when you think back to musicians and music labels, you felt like at some point there was, the ethics did matter. Like, there were certain labels where you think, okay, well, they did care about those kind of things. Like Factory Records, for example, going back in the day, they were always very much like the artists own everything, almost to their detriment. I remember Rough Trade Records when they first started out were very much like that. But now it's just like, no, we're not giving you free money. It's our money. And it's like, there's no concept of the fact that, like you said, this is their art.
Yeah.
Like, so... Yeah, I know we kind of glossed over the Spotify guy, but one of the things that he said is about the price of producing content.
Yeah, it's free.
And it's just like, that made my skin
crawl. It's not
crawl.
free, you bellend. What about people's time?
Exactly. Like, as freelancers, as we both are, we understand the concept of how much time costs. And when you're trying to create music, when you're trying to create art, it's not just about the fact that you don't have to pay to do it. You've got to sit there and think about it and create. You've got to have the time. And you've got to have the time to not have to be spending it all working somewhere else in order to afford to live. So, and
you've got to have the environment. So, you know, like we're in Material Studios in Liverpool right now with the fantastic guys that run it. And all around us, we can see guitars and mixing desks and drums and all the rest of it. But the lads won't pay him for fucking sorting your album out, and not unreasonably. Do you know what I mean? So it's not fucking free.
No.
CEO of Spotify, Bellend.
Yeah.
And by the way, I just meant to say as well about Tom Gray. He is Mr. Tom Gray on Twitter, and his campaign, bit of a personal crusade really, is called Broken Record. And there's a very popular initial Twitter thread that he did,
Yeah.
which is just, it's quite long, and I'm not
really
going to read out, but it was fantastic and nailed it, really.
And it
so
did
go and
actually,
read that if you're interested.
it did actually cause some, the culture and media sport.
It got mentioned in Parliament.
They just started a whole new investigation because of it. So fair play to Tom.
Yeah, and Tom actually stood as a Labour candidate in Brighton Pavilion in the election, but got defeated by the Greens. But very interesting fella, and worthy of going looking up if you're interested in all this kind of thing, which hopefully you are. Otherwise, you might have zoned out some time ago. Don't worry, we'll talk.
Two old fellas ranting about music.
Don't worry, we'll talk about shite and fucking microdosing and whatever else, licking frogs and all that. Normal service will be resumed next week.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was the part of the Glastonbury story that I decided not to
tell. I mean, I had a bit more on vinyl v digital. Just to say that according to BPI, vinyl LP sales in the UK increased by 11% in the first 51 weeks. Well, there's only one more after that of 2023. Gen Z are listening to more vinyl, which I sort of touched on before as well. I mean, my thing with it, and I think this has been said a million times, not exactly like a new thing to say, but I've been buying vinyl now for years, and like more recently I've enjoyed the revival just simply because lots of things have been like reissued and I've been able to get my hands on them and stuff like that. I said to you before, I treated myself to a load of Verve vinyl for my birthday. Basically, that was my birthday present to myself, and it's just night and day, like the experience of it, to me anyway, of, you know, whacking it up on my phone and connecting a Bluetooth speaker, or actually taking out the vinyl out of the sleeve, putting it on the record player, listening through big fuck off old wooden speakers that are great and I love. It's just, all of that is just so much more satisfying. And then, you know, sitting there with it on, reading the, you know, the album sleeves, enjoying the art, looking at everyone who sort of contributed to each track, you know, looking at the thanks to mum and dad and fucking whoever else. Like, it's just so much more satisfying.
It is. There's a ritualistic element to it. I'm glad you mentioned the speakers as well, because this is one of the things that always gets lost in the vinyl versus digital argument. It's like, you can have the nicest vinyl player, you can have the most, the thickest, deepest cuts. If you're playing it on shit speakers, it's still going to sound shit. That's an important part of it. But you're right. There's so much more to it than just the listening of the music. Like, it's a real experience for me. I think about something else as well in terms of the music experience. It's not just about the listening to it. It's about the buying. So going into record shops and just flicking through stacks and stacks of records and finding something and be like, oh, like, I mean, obviously I'm biased because I'm a DJ. So that's a big part of my life, is trying to find new music. But without, like, I've been lamenting the death of record shops for years and years and years. And when I was a CD DJ, I was also a little bit annoyed at the fact that the only things you could buy with vinyl, like, you can buy CDs anymore. So I'd been robbed of one of my favorite pastimes, which is just going into a shop and just flicking through all the CDs and being like, oh, I've got this one. Oh, I wonder what this is like. But I've bought myself a little vinyl player as well, so I can do that again. And it's like, just going into, I implore everybody, if you've got vinyl, just go into the nearest charity shop, go into the back, find a little box of records and just have a flick through. You will not believe what you'll find in there.
You get some belters in there. And you know, you mentioned the speakers as well. Like, I've gone through, you know, various sets of speakers over the years with my record player, but the current set that I've got are big fuck off wooden Wharfdales, old ones that I bought second hand off eBay. I think it was eBay, and it was a fella in Walton. And when I went round, he just lived in like a 2 up, 2 down. Was a decorator, proper boss, salt of the earth type fella. And we had a chat about music and everything. And he was like, sold me them like reasonable price. I don't know what it was, like say 40, 50 quid, whatever. And he was just like, I'm really glad these are going to a good home.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was like, yes, lad. Do you know what I mean? And I love those speakers. And I just, one other little story, and I haven't told this one on here before. There was a Liverpool band called Krakatilla. And I liked them. I thought they were good. I thought they were going somewhere. 2 of the lads in the band went to my school. Dave Penswick and Jay Lewis, who's now playing with the Zootons and Cast.
Yeah.
He's brought out his own stuff as well. So he's doing fairly well for himself. I think, as far as I know, with Dave, he's another one with like, you know, he's just got a day job now, but he's still a fantastic musician. Anyway, like I've got Krakatilla did release some stuff, and I've got that. But there was like this rumor that I kept seeing in like little forums here and there that, you know, that there was an album and that it never got released for whatever reason. And I mentioned that to one of my mates, and he was like, well, I was in, because like these lads were in my school, but they were a couple of years above me. So I didn't know Dave to go to him and ask. But my mate Dave, another Dave, was in his year. And I just mentioned this in passing, and he was like, I'll just ask Pengo if you want. And I was like, oh, well, yeah. And then next minute, I'm WhatsApping Pengo myself, saying, so is that true? And he went, nah. And he told me about a story, like what went on with the record label, and they got messed about a bit and all this kind of stuff. And I said, okay, so is there any stuff, though, that I wouldn't have heard, that's never seen the light of day? And he was like, I'll dig some stuff out for you, mate. Do you know what I mean? And then he what I thought was telling, my point of telling this is that he sent me them just on like WhatsApp as MP3s.
Oh, right, yeah.
But he said, listen to these through speakers.
Yes.
And I was like, yes, lad. And I said, don't worry, they'll be blasted through Wharfdales. And they sounded fantastic.
Amazing.
They sound like, I think they sounded a bit like sort of like Cream, that type of sound.
Oh, cool.
Back in the day. But I'm not too sure what you could find online about Krakatilla these days, but have a look if you want. Anyway, where are we up to here? We've been banging on. We are approaching, I reckon we've done about 52 minutes, I think. We'll move on from the music, and we'll do... Well, I'll read out my little mental health moment thing first. There's another thing we might get to, which is a bit strange. But anyway, so I mentioned the thing I want to read out this week. I mentioned this, touched on it the other week. And it's something I do as part of my routine to sort of keep hold of my mental health, really. And it's that simple. Make your bed. And I mentioned it in passing the other week on the show, but I found out possibly where this advice came from. So it's from a fella called Admiral William McRaven. And he did a proper speech about this. So I'll just read it out. He says, if you make your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It'll give you a small sense of pride, and it will encourage you to do another task and another and another. And by the end of the day, that one task completed will have turned into many tasks completed. Making your bed will also reinforce the fact that little things in life matter. And if you can't do the little things right, you'll never do the big things right. And if by chance you have a miserable day, you'll come home to a bed that is made, that you made. And a made bed gives you encouragement that tomorrow will be better. If you want to change the world, start off by making your bed.
Now, I would not normally have thought of that as a task, but you're right. Like, there's something about making your bed, and even doing it in the morning, let's say, as soon as you get out, so it's ready. Just so, like I say, so you can tick something off and go on and go on and go on. Because there's been so many times when I've got late tonight, and it's like, it's getting to bedtime, and then I remember, oh shit, I've not made bed. So, like, you've taken the sheets off to put them in the washing machine, and you've not put new sheets on, and you're like, oh, that's such a graft to do when you're tired and you just want to go to sleep. And the amount of times I just thought, oh, just fuck it, I just go to sleep with just the sheet and not anything else. And it's like, you don't have proper sleep because you're not in your proper set. And it's like, yeah, the idea of that first building block, just putting that first step down in order to step onto the next one and onto the next one and onto the next one. Now I'm into it.
I think it's really good advice because, you know, I've mentioned several times across the time I've been doing this, you know, I was obviously in a bit of a hole at one point, in a bit of a rut, lost my dad, other things happened in my life, and I was just in a bit of a shitty place. And one of the things that got recommended to me was start with that. Always make your bed. And so ever since then, I always have. And even if I'm late for work, I'll make the bed. Yeah. Even if, you know, I'm slightly late for something else, whatever it might be, make the bed. Always make the bed. Because as soon as you've done it and you look at it, well, this is how my mind works. Anyway, I look at it and I'm like, get in. That's done. That's done. Here we go. I'm off. And like he said there, it's like, right, I'm off now. I can get stuff done. I'm in the right place. And equally, as he also said, you come home, you've had a shit day. I'm just going to dive into bed, get my head down, and it's done,
It's
and
there,
it's neat,
waiting
and it's
for you.
tidy, and it looks inviting, and it's not a scrumpled piece of, you know, and it's just like there's lots of books, and you know, I haven't prepped this book, so I can't remember the name of the thing because I'm tired again. SARS, but there's lots of books about Atomic Habits. That's the book. Atomic Habits is a great book, and obviously it's about the power of habit and creating good habits and all that kind of thing. And this is just one of them, making your bed.
Yeah.
We can all make our bed at the start of the day. We can all find that couple of minutes to do it. Start from there. Honestly, it's a belter. Right, what have we done here? We have done... Oh, we still got a little bit of time. Just looking in the comments to see if there was anything interesting. Lots of people saying that they're actually enjoying the music chat, which is really good.
That's good.
Because, you know, we're just throwing it in there. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't, you know us as well, don't really care. I'm going to give you it anyway and then worry about what happens afterwards.
One thing I did want to shout out that I forgot to mention previously. So I actually recorded my set at Glastonbury.
Oh, boss.
So it's on my YouTube. If you look at my YouTube page, Mo Stewart, it's on there, or my SoundCloud page, The Mighty Mojo. You can actually listen to it. So you can hear, you can close your eyes, you can have a warm beer, and you can imagine that you were there.
Is right. And if people want to see The Mighty Mojo in person, DJing, where
Jacaranda Friday nights.
Jacaranda
from
Friday
10
nights.
o'clock. Yeah.
There you go. Excellent. Well, the other thing, I think we can do it briefly. The other thing that sort of whacked in around sort of mental health type stuff is something called, and I'd never heard of this until the weekend, raw dogging. Now, it's not that. Before you start, it's not that. Take your mind out the gutter. So this, I mean, I know it sounds like that.
It's equally as wild as that, to be fair.
It is wild. So it's one of these things that God knows where it's sort of come from, and then it's developed legs. And it's something you do when you're on a flight, and it's the act of spending a plane journey wrapped up in only your own thoughts. And people are sort of, this is weird in it as well, creating content about them doing it. You know what I mean? So here's me looking straight ahead, staring into space. I did this for the whole of my flight. And then people, as they always do, are getting more and more extreme. So like, I did it for this flight and that's longer than that flight. I did it for this flight and I didn't even have a drink. I did it for this flight and didn't speak to anyone. I did it for this, I didn't have a wait. You know, whatever. And it's just like, don't get me wrong, right? In terms of like mental health and all that and getting your brain in a good place, I think there is something to be said for sometimes just sitting there doing fuck all, no music, nothing, chilling the fuck out and being with your own thoughts for a little bit. I get that. But if you're saying I'm on a transatlantic flight, or I'm going to Dubai or Australia, or like I went to Sri Lanka, I think that was 11 hours or something, you know, whatever. Nah. I'm not just sitting there looking at a map for 11 hours.
For starters, that's how you get deep frame thrombosis. You need to kind of get up and walk around every now and then. But no, it's a kernel of something good taken to far too close to the extreme. Now, I'm someone who will often have headphones on if I'm just going upstairs for a really long shit. So the idea of not wearing headphones or listening to music on a 7-8 hour flight is just crazy to me. However, there are times when I will get to a point where my ears are hot. I'm just like, no, I'm just going to take it off. I'm just going to kind of reset. And it's weird because when you're on a flight and everybody's watching something, everybody has got headphones on, staring straight ahead at the seat in front of them, watching their little movies. If you then come out of that, it's like, you know that scene in The Matrix where he goes out the other side and he kind of unplugs himself and it's just white. It's weird kind of atmosphere where it's just this eerie calm. You just hear the hum of the plane and you're just like, see, I like that. I like experiencing that for a bit.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it for 8
out
hours.
the window and stuff like that, and you know, like when you can see obviously a daylight flight, whatever, and you're like, oh, wonder where we are there or whatever. Might check the map to see where that. Oh, is that? Oh, yeah, whatever. I get all that, but like, you know, one of the first fellas who's done it, and sort of like this is where it sort of, you know, started from. There's a TikTok user, West was here, who's boasted that he's enjoyed 7 and 9 hour flights only watching the maps and airspeed. Then there's another user who claimed that when he raw dogs, he doesn't even eat. He captioned his video, just raw dogged the flight from Orlando to LA, no water, no snacks, no music, no entertainment, seat fully upright. The power of the mind has no limit. I mean, imagine you saw this cunt. So there's a fella just on the plane like that.
Yeah, I think I'd be thinking...
Terminator?
He's either Terminator or he's one of those kind of on-flight detectives, or he's someone who's just shit scared of flying. And in that case, in all three of those cases, I'm not touching him, I'm not going near him. However, I do have one of these of my own. And I found it by accident, and now I'm obsessed with it. So when a plane is coming into land, I will normally be listening to music, and I think I was going to America, and I was just listening to, I think it was the latest Radiohead album, and there's a song by Radiohead called Burn the Witch, and the end of that song is kind of this mad crescendo of kind of like violins as well as strings, and I was listening to that just as the plane was coming in, and it was just like, and it was just like, wow, that was intense. So now, every time I'm on a flight, I try to find the perfect descent song, the perfect song that kind of like encapsulates that mood of like, you're coming into land. Yeah. And you know what I'm like? I love music. I love finding songs for certain situations.
Well, better than Raw Dog.
It is. Like, so I've not got a fancy name for it, but like, find a song for your descent, people. That's what I would suggest. See,
they've wheeled out a psychology lecturer, and as someone who does PR for a university, I know how easily these experts are wheeled out. And she says that, you know, there are benefits of, you know, low stimulation for your brain, basically, or what other people would call boredom.
Yes.
As it can lead to ideas, it can lead to creativity and that kind of thing. And I get that, because I think, like, you know, when you stay on our phones and scrolling all day and all that, your mind does become a bit of a mush sometimes.
That's true.
So that's why I'm saying, like, I get, like everything, there's a balance to be achieved here. But 8 hours, 9 hours not eating, you know,
what will happen is, and this is what happens to me whenever I kind of unplug from everything for a little bit. What ends up happening is I hear someone laughing, and then I'm looking through the gap in the seats at them and what they're watching. It's like, what's he laughing at? And so then I find myself, the amount of times I found myself not watching my screen, but watching someone else's screen, and doing it for like 5 to 10 minutes, and just like, what are you doing? You've got your own screen right in front of you. You can just watch what you want. Why are you watching it through there? And it's just like, your brain, so like, if you try to destimulate it, it's almost like we've been so stimulated for so long, it will try and search for the latest thing. But I mean, I like looking at the map occasionally. Like, one of the things I always like doing is zooming in, particularly when we're going to America, and trying to find as many towns in America that are the same name as the towns in England, because there's loads. Although I found out recently,
any Heightons?
I believe there are. I found out recently. So there's a rapper called Odyssey who came over to play at Future Yard.
Good venue.
Yeah, really good venue. And a really good rapper as well. It was a good show. If you get a chance, go and see him. And he's a bit of a historian. He likes to like look into all the places that he's playing at. And he was like, Birkenhead is probably the only English town he's come across that isn't in America. There's no Birkenhead in America. So there's
only one Birkenhead.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. Probably best. Only joking. Listen, big thanks to everyone involved as usual. The studio, Material Studios, as I mentioned before. Mo Stewart for standing in for Kopi this week, who's tan on his ass in Turkey maybe. And look Mo up, _mighty_mojo on Twitter. You can go from there. All the links are there. He's got a link tree and all that kind of stuff. You can disappear down whatever Mo content mine you like to go down. But thanks Mo for coming on. Thanks for you've been brilliant, mate, in both shows. Hope you've enjoyed both shows as well. And you know, do another thing for your mental health. Be nice to people. That's boss. Yeah. So go and be nice to Mo. Send them a tweet. Say you were boss on the shows. It was great to hear. All that kind of thing. Tell people about the late challenge. And yeah, we'll see you here next week.